Thanks, Peter. You've had from Peter the consultant's view, data-based, analytical, and requiring insight. From me, you're going to get the customer perspective, which is obviously impressionistic, entirely subjective, and probably wrong. But what I'm going to try and do is talk a bit about Telstra and the economy we work in, a bit about our history in the outsourcing and offshoring game, and a bit about our future and some of the things that have been driving the organisation through its history and into its future. Some stuff about the organisation and the economy in which we reside. We are both a telco and an information services company. Just to pull some of those things, some of those stats off that page to try and paint the picture of the environment we work in. Till 3 months ago, we were still majority government owned. We now have 1 in 6 Australian adults as retail shareholders in our company. I think if you translate that into an Indian population, you're probably somewhere near 100 million retail shareholders. We get talked about a lot over barbecues in back gardens. Everything we do is subject to enormous political and public scrutiny. Moving jobs around the world is something that gets talked about a lot in our circumstances. When I was first asked to do this, I was told that Peter was an Englishman, and that box at the bottom of that slide said that there were more people in India that played cricket than there were people in Australia. But it seemed inappropriate for an Australian to talk about cricket in front of an Englishman, so I took that out and won't again mention cricket. We have a population of 20 million people. Ours is, by global standards, a very small economy, of which we and a small number of other major corporates are a very large part. You don't have an enormous list of potential customers in the Australian marketplace, customers of size in the Australian marketplace. And I think that makes us, in some ways, much harder to deal with. We are a small number of corporations competing in a global marketplace out of a very small economy, and I think that's part of what makes dealing with Australia difficult, only part. What do we do? Again, just to pull a few of those points from the page. Not only a telco, fixed and mobile, we are an ISP. We are Australia's leading ISP. We're in the cable television distribution business. We're in the information business, the advertising business, through the Trading Post and other things in Australia. So we are a business that competes in a number of different markets, and that's a fundamental change from 10, 12 years ago when we were a telco. I'm always intrigued by this slide because the right-hand half of this slide is always the same for every corporation at every time. It always intrigues me. We always write the same stuff on the right-hand side. The reason we need to grow revenue, cut costs, change the game, simplify and change the culture are different. The left-hand side's different. Every corporation, every year it changes, but the right-hand side stays the same. The reality is that because of regulatory changes in the Australian economy, our traditional core business is declining both in revenue and margin terms. The growth in data and internet volumes is exponential, has been for some time now. There is a regulatory environment that encourages new entrants to our market. As I said earlier, we were 51% government owned until 3 months ago now, all of which is driving a fundamental need for us to do different business and do different business differently. So there is a massive transformation program on foot in our organisation. We quite typically for a big industrial had a massive complexity of homegrown systems, bespoke systems that have existed for, in some cases, decades, and make it impossible for us to run the new and agile business that we need to become. Net, more than 60%, depends how you count it a bit, but more than 60% of our current applications will be replaced by the transformation program, and that includes just about every major system, every customer-facing system, billing system, and we have more customers than there are people in Australia. Every customer-facing system, those systems we aren't replacing, we have to redesign interfaces with. So all that is about the changing requirements of our business. We've been an engineering-based business bent on efficiency, doing what we do better for some time. The transformation program is designed to help us build an agile business that's able to do more different things more quickly than has been the case in the past. And everything that's happening behind that is driving in the same direction. Ownership changes, changes in the marketplace, regulatory changes, all of that driving in the same direction. So a bit about the history of outsourcing in our organisation. We were, in Australian terms, an early adopter. We were in fact a player. We had a JV with IBM and one other in Australia back in '97. But our outsourcing journey began in '97, outsourcing to one major provider, principally around the operations space, but beginning to dabble in the AD&M stuff. We extended that in 2000 and did the first of 4 deals that we have in place today in the AD&M space, and grew the scope of that in the 03-05 timeline there, changed around the portfolios, moved work between providers, and got a lot more interested in global delivery than we'd been before. And I've called the phase we're at now emerging partnering. In an early version of this slide it said partnering, but I think that's over-optimistic and possibly overly flattering. I think we're emerging towards partnership deals. We have got some plans to, as we call it, shoot some of the rats and mice, concentrate our service providers in a smaller number of larger hands, and drive some of the benefits that can get us. So that's the last 10 years of outsourcing at Telstra, and I think in terms of what Peter said and in terms of the experience that I've had in other organisations and we've all had, that's probably fairly typical. Peter had a much more elegant slide to make that first point, but everyone's still interested in savings, and then savings, and then savings. And however we want to slice or dice it, we want more for less. You can package that and put bows on it any way you like, but did I mention savings?